I'm Ella. I'm a residence advisor in Exchange currently, and I previously worked in Orchard Commons and Vanier.
Hi, I'm Camille Lemire, and I'm a senior residence advisor in Ponderosa Commons.
Hi, my name is Zara Fazl, and I'm a senior residence advisor in Marine Drive.
Hi, my name is Red. I am an RA at Exchange Residence. I've also worked at Marine Drive and Montague.
I'm Aditya, and I'm an RA or residence advisor in Ponderosa Commons, specifically in Oak House in Ponderosa Commons.
So what are some of the events and activities you have organized to get residents involved with each other during this pandemic?
So the first event that I organized was a fitness program. We did this on Zoom. We watched a fitness TEDx talk, and then we discussed it after with the residents, and then we were able to set up our own fitness goals for the summer. Some of the other programs that I've done includes the sunset strolls, where the residents and some of the RAs and I went to Moa. We also went to Spanish Banks, and this coming week we are going to Tower Beach, so we are going to see the sunset.
With the COVID restrictions, we were able to host different kinds of events for our community, including a virtual Harry Potter escape room, movie nights that are socially distant, and finally a cooking show that was online.
Some events that I've been involved with in residence since quarantine has begun have included Digital Mafia. If you've never played Mafia, Mafia is a social deduction game that my coworkers and I have been able to figure out how to adapt to an online platform, and we've been able to run a version of this program 2 times since quarantine has begun. I've also worked on a DIY ice cream workshop where I was able to organize contactless deliveries of prepackaged materials so students could make DIY ice cream inspired after flavors from local Vancouver boutiques that were closed at the time when this program happened. And right now I'm working on a program called Growing Together with advisors in every currently open area of residence life during the summer. And what will happen during the program is that students will respond to a written prompt about how they plan to perform allyship in communities that they may not be a part of. And by doing so, the area that they live in will donate a little bit of money to a specific charity. So for example, in Pond, we're hoping to highlight Rainbow Refugees. And other areas will be highlighting other wonderful nonprofit organizations around the Lower Mainland.
So my first program of the summer was called the Great Exchange Bake Off, where a colleague of mine, together we baked a vegan chocolate cake in our dorm room, and we actually baked it over live stream, which was really interesting. I've never used Facebook Live before. And the way that we got residents to interact with the program was by actually giving out the ingredients for the cake so we could all make it together, but separately in our dorm rooms, which was interesting. It actually worked out really well, and the cake was really yummy. And then the second event that I ran in collaboration with some other RAs in Twix, it was an area-wide event called Twix Terrariums. We actually got a lot of people to engage in this. I think around 45 to 50 residents between Tallwood and Exchange. We made mini terrariums, and we actually did that over Zoom. We gave everyone the materials to make the terrariums, but then over Zoom we instructed people how to remove the plant from the pot and pot it in the terrarium and decorate it with rocks and sand and moss. So it was really fun, and I'm really happy with how that event turned out.
So overall, how has the transition been in finding new ways to connect to the residents?
It's been difficult for sure. There have been challenges. I think one of the most significant challenges and one of the most understandably difficult challenges is still kind of fostering community and allowing people to feel as close together as you would like them to feel when they live in residence. That's difficult when people are hesitant to meet each other, and understandably hesitant to meet each other in person. But it's also kind of encouraged me to try to think outside the box and think of online programming or programming that maintains social distancing that still allows people to get connected and feel like they're a part of residence and feel like they're getting that interaction that they want as a part of residence. And I think in that way, it's led to a couple of new ways to connect RAs and residents like that.
So at first it was really hard to be creative. It seemed as though Facebook or Zoom were the only ways to go, and it was hard to get more residents that way. So as residents advisors, we felt like we were making less impact because we were reaching less people. But with time, we were able to develop strategies that work. For example, we delivered throughout residents and got them to engage that way with us. We hosted some outdoor activities as well, which were socially distanced.
It's definitely been a little bit of a learning curve. In summer residence life, some of us are moved into communities that we may have not been with for the rest of the school year. And what that means is that you might be working with students that you've never met before, and the only contact you've had with them is over email. And as a residence advisor, your role is to both support your residents and help connect them to the community. And when you haven't met someone, it's really hard to get a sense of who they are, build a baseline of trust, get a sense of what they might need to feel a part of the community. So connecting residents and advisors becomes a little bit difficult because you're not exactly sure how to go about it because you don't have those kind of basic tools to start building that. However, all of us over the summer have been advisors in the past, and so a lot of this right now is just trusting our instincts about what we know works in residence, assessing what we need as students right now and how we can help bridge the gaps to getting students to those things they need because we also need them too.
I think that one of the biggest challenges that I faced with programming in the summer, in upper year, and then especially during this pandemic was what residents really actually would appreciate in programming and what they would attend. So what I did was I spoke with my supervisor and we kind of brainstormed different ideas, and a lot of it had to do with maybe programming to assist people in their new lifestyle changes. People are indoors more often, gyms are closed, could you get people moving more often, or propose healthy alternatives to different baking recipes, or maybe little creative activities that will make them feel less like they're in a pandemic. So I think that that's kind of what I focused on, and it was definitely really challenging, especially because I wasn't able to build relationships with residents in person as much as I was able to in the past. But I think that using social media such as Facebook and Instagram really helped not only promote all of the events that we're programming, but also just connect with residents and understand what their needs are right now.
What is the trend in terms of participation by residents online as opposed to the events held in person in the past?
With the online environment, we've seen an interesting thing where a lot of people have joined students who we usually don't see, and that's probably because they're able to tune in whenever they want from the comfort of their home and right on their office desk. However, it's difficult to kind of tell if we're successful at events. Even if the numbers are high, we're not quite sure that we're meeting the resident needs, which is difficult to keep track of when it's an online environment because people come with different expectations.
So I think this has been interesting because we actually have, I think, seen similar levels of attendance, which is something that we didn't really expect ahead of time. And what's really been interesting is that I think having programs online kind of opens it up to more people. In the past, while there have been programs, well, there are lots of programs that work for both introverted and extroverted people. Just the nature of large programs that involve gathering people do tend to cater more towards extrovert people who are more enthusiastic about going out and meeting everyone in residence. I think that having things online helps to kind of break down that barrier a little bit more because people who are more hesitant to do that can still interact in the chat in live streams or can have their camera off and talk in Zoom calls or things like that. So I think it's been interesting that we've partially seen a similar level of attendance, but also we've seen a wider variety of residents coming to these events.
I think that a lot of people would say that our participation is low, which I agree with, but I think that people are actually more committed to our programming because often people have to sign up for materials to be delivered to their rooms to improve social distancing. So there's a lot of prior planning before events where people actually commit to it. So we have more people that are committing their time than before the pandemic, but still participation isn't as high as it was before.
For me personally, I haven't noticed any difference in engagement. I've tried to plan my programs pretty intentionally to still try to incentivize people to come and try to remove as many barriers as possible. However, I've definitely heard from other advisors that they've definitely noticed a dip in online programming. I think that's something we're all going to continue struggling with as we head into the fall.
So we definitely observed less participation of residents during the pandemic as opposed to during the the normal school season, and I believe this is because we don't have the advantage of attracting people who are just passing by through our programs and inviting them to join. So yeah, in general, it was harder in the beginning to get people to commit to Zoom or to Facebook Live programs.
How are you planning on including students who are currently at home or in a different country?
I think this is something that came up in the Mafia program that we ran, because there were people involved who were in different time zones. And I think there's two main solutions to this, which is one, have programs that work whether people are in the same time zone or in different time zones, like Mafia or things like that. And then the other is just to have programs at many different times of the day so that you can kind of cater to people in different time zones. I think for the most part, programs tend to be based on people who are actually in residence because of the situation. We've been trying to include people who are in different places because it's possible that, especially right now during the summer, they can't be here but would still want to be involved in the community, and we want them to be a part of the community. So yeah, I think just events that allow people in different time zones to take part, and events at different times so that it's less awkward for people in different time zones, are both important tools to this.
Luckily, our Facebook group actually existed before COVID hit, so a lot of people that were living in exchange were already on the Facebook group. So even though people have left, they're able to still interact with the events that we have. A lot of our events and passive programming are actually available to residents on the Facebook group. And even if we are doing a Facebook Live that might be occurring in a different time zone, those Facebook Lives are kept on the Facebook page so people can watch it later on. Also, a lot of passives that the RAs create, like tips on shopping or fun quizzes that you can fill out, are posted on our Facebook group, so people, no matter where they are, can actually interact with those as well.
For me, I think it's really important to try to decrease the barrier that is time in programs. And I think that can be done by either creating materials in your program that can be saved for later. So if that's recording your program or saving different tutorials that people can access for later, or creating a program that runs longer. So for example, a program that doesn't necessarily need the RA to be present to keep running. So an example of this is Digital Mafia. For context, how that game worked a little bit is that it took place entirely over Facebook Messenger, and residents could interact with the game 24/7 as long as they were still active. And we had a few established scheduled things that would happen every day. So for example, like a vote or someone being eliminated. But what we noticed from that event is that we actually had so many students engaging in this who weren't physically in residence. And I think a huge part of this was that time was suddenly removed as a barrier, because students who were in a different time zone or students who were working were able to engage in the game in their own time. That being said, it's not that time was completely eliminated from that program. We had a student reach out to us kind of as we were planning our second bout of the game, because they were in a different time zone. They were about 4 or 5 hours ahead, and kind of the last scheduled thing to happen every day would usually happen while they were sleeping. So they reached out to us to ask if we could even move that back by an hour, which we did. And it really made us realize, this student might only be, 5 hours ahead, but think about students on the other half of the world and how they might be impeded by programming that happens in such a different schedule than their own. And even though this program seems accessible, it's actually not really accessible to people who are outside of this continent. So I think something I'm really thinking about is how can I continue to make programming that really chips away at that barrier and really allows things to become more accessible for students who might not be here.